Welcome to A Point for Reflection for Thursday, the 15th of October 2020. Some years ago now, I attended a youth meeting when one of the speakers was an elderly, infirm lady. She sat in her wheelchair and she spoke to the quite large crowd. As she spoke, she radiated such joy and peace and declared her delight in seeing all the young people. She spoke of her experience of God and the hope she had in her, as well as the hope she had with such an assembled group from a different generation to her. It was the only time I ever saw her or heard her, and I really cannot remember much of what she said, but I can picture her, and that attitude she gave has remained with me ever since. Attitudes go a long way to create conflict or bring healing. They also reveal a lot about what motivates an action. I remember talking to a minister some years ago, and he spoke of sitting next to someone at somebody's anniversary dinner. He said the person next to him did not stop talking, mostly about themselves. At the end of the meal, when it was time to go home, the person turned to the minister and said, "I've had such a lovely time talking with you." But he said to me that he asked only a few questions and hardly had to say anything. Sadly, it suggests there is a lot of loneliness around and people who need someone to talk to. I suspect that has been exacerbated in recent months. Some people's attitude is destructive, both to themselves and towards others. Some people are driven by their own embitteredness. Some people are driven by an openness and genuine desire for what is best for others. Some people are so damaged by others that their attitude is simply for survival or for self-preservation. Even within God's people, a whole range of attitudes and motivations are found, and we can easily fall into the trap of hearing what we want to hear. Perhaps we are more in need of God's wisdom than we realize. Wisdom is not the same as knowledge. As is often quoted, knowledge is that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is not putting it into a fruit salad. It is also quoted that it is better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and to remove all doubt. Part of the problem is we can all be taken in by someone else who may act all sincerely and appear quite wise, but in reality they are deluding us. When we look at some of the writings in the letters of the New Testament, we are often blissfully unaware of most of the conflicts that can lie behind them. We often don't really know what has motivated the writing or phrasing of particular statements, and sometimes we can make educated guesses, but certain things we are drawn to and certain things we are not. The letter of James is one that seems fairly unique in its character and presents things very practically. It's as if the author is appealing to people who are mostly motivated by actions rather than contemplation. So the people who want to express their faith in God by caring for the sick, or the poor, or the marginalized, will often quote some of James's words. Those who see faith as leading to justice will find empathy in James's letter. James deals with such issues as persecution, poverty and wealth, controlling what you say, and caring for those in need, typified as orphans and widows. There is a biblical notion of wisdom that comes from God. This is expressly desired by Solomon to help him govern his people. See the first book of Kings, chapter 3. It was more often seen as something quite rare and otherworldly. But these words from James chapter 3 verses 13 to 18 really suggest such wisdom is open to us all. In this version it is entitled The Wisdom from Above, and I'm reading from the Good News version of the Bible. Are there any of you who are wise and understanding? You are to prove it by your good life, by your good deeds performed with humility and wisdom. But if in your heart you are jealous bitter, and selfish. Don't sin against the truth by boasting of your wisdom. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven. It belongs to the world. It is unspiritual and demonic. Where there is jealousy and selfishness, there is also disorder and every kind of evil. But the wisdom from above is pure first of all. It is also peaceful, gentle, and friendly. It is full of compassion and produces a harvest of good deeds. It is free from prejudice and hypocrisy. And goodness is the harvest that is produced from the seeds that peacemakers plant in peace. Perhaps the wisest part of the text is telling us about the attributes where godliness is discovered. This godliness is discovered where there is peacefulness, gentleness, and friendliness. These are often not held up as great virtues, but ones that arrogantly can be taken advantage of. I heard an interview on the radio recently where being discussed was how the vulnerable are taken advantage of by those cold callers who phone you offering all sorts of insurances that you don't really need and certainly didn't ask for. God's wisdom would encourage us to look out for such vulnerable and help them resist those who would take advantage of them. Perhaps that is ultimately what wisdom offers. It reminds us of what we need. We need those around us who will help us not just through our distress, but will be with us in the good times. We need those who will help us discern a good and honourable way forward. We need those who will not just be friendly between different people we like, but will be friendly in the name of the church. We are not a people who are meant to be at odds with those around us, judging them, but are meant to be the ones who walk alongside and live peaceably in our communities. Wisdom is surely understanding that our cause is not about what they do, over which we have little or no influence, but it is about what we or I do, over which we have complete control. Wisdom sometimes tells us we need to walk away. Wisdom asks of us if the fruit of all our labour is producing peace or not. Wisdom would suggest that if we are not producing peace, we may actually be labouring in the wrong places. And that comes back to our attitude. With some people there will never be peace while the deep-rooted, jealous, bitter and selfish attitudes are gripped onto tightly. Until we let go, until we let God in, this wisdom eludes us. But when we lose our arrogance, when we learn and take on board the attitudes that are most needed, when we realise our need of each other, then maybe God's wisdom is taking a hold in our lives. And maybe then we start the journey toward peace. Loving God, lead us into wisdom, that we may live peaceably, gently and friendly in our communities, and that we may see your kingdom come. Amen.